You know that feeling when you check your email even though you shouldn't? Like your brain is saying, don't do it, but your fingers have already typed in the password. I was standing on our hotel balcony in Santorini. The sky was this ridiculous shade of blue that doesn't even look real in photos. Nathan was still asleep inside, sprawled across our bed with the white sheets tangled around him. 2 days into our honeymoon. 2 days. I don't know why I checked my work email. Habit, I guess. Addiction, probably. The subject line was personnel update, position elimination. Not even my name, just personnel update. Like I was a freaking software patch. I remember how the phone felt suddenly heavy in my hand, how my stomach dropped before I even opened it, how the bright Greek sunshine seemed to dim as I read. Dear Elena, effective immediately, your position at Blackwood Partners has been eliminated due to departmental restructuring. Your final paycheck, including 2 week severance, will be deposited on the regular pay schedule. Please coordinate with IT regarding the return of company property upon your return. Regards, Josephine Blackwood, Chief Executive Officer. That's it. 6 years at the company. 6 years of 60-hour weeks, of canceled plans and missed birthdays. 6 years of building their client list from nothing into something that made them millions. And it ended with a 58-word email. I read it 4 times, each time hoping the words would somehow rearrange themselves. They didn't. I walked into the bathroom so Nathan wouldn't hear me cry, sat on the cold tile floor with my back against the door and sobbed into a hotel towel. The kind of crying where you can't breathe right, where your whole body shakes, where you're making these awful animal sounds you didn't know you could make. I cried until my face was swollen and I couldn't see straight. I was 34 years old, newly married, and unemployed in a foreign country. Hi, I'm Elena Christakos. Well, Elena Christakos Reeves now. Half Greek, all workaholic, apparently completely disposable. Until 2 weeks ago, I was the Senior Client Relations Director at Blackwood Partners, a wealth management firm in Boston that caters to high net worth individuals, which is just fancy talk for rich people who need someone else to manage their money. Before I go on, can you hit like and subscribe and tell me in the comments if something like this has happened to you? Because in those first few hours, I felt so alone, I could barely breathe. Like I was the only person who'd ever been betrayed like this. I know now that's not true, but God, it felt that way. So there I was, sitting on the bathroom floor of this stupidly expensive hotel that I'd saved 3 years for, trying to figure out how to tell my husband of exactly 10 days that I'd just lost my job. The job that was paying for half of our mortgage. The job I'd talked about at our wedding when I thanked my work family for being so supportive. The job where, apparently, no one even had the decency to call me. I splashed cold water on my face and tried to pull myself together. Nathan knocked on the door. Lena, you okay in there? I opened the door and his face just fell. He knew immediately. What happened? Is it your mom? I handed him my phone, watched his expression change from concern to confusion to anger. What the actual, they can't do this. Can they do this? While you're on your honeymoon? I nodded. Apparently they can. But why? Your last performance review was stellar. You just landed the Petropolis account last month. The Petropolis account, a $50 million portfolio I'd spent 18 months courting. Dinners, presentations, weekend calls. Mr. Petropoulos was a fellow Greek-American who'd built a shipping empire and wanted someone who understood family values to handle his money. Josephine had practically wept with joy when I closed that deal. I don't know why, I said, which wasn't entirely true. I had suspicions. Nathan pulled me into a hug, and I could feel his heart racing. He was angry in a way I couldn't be yet. I was still in shock. We're going to figure this out, he said into my hair. But first, we're turning off your phone and having breakfast. They don't get to ruin our honeymoon. So I did what my husband asked. I turned off my phone. We ate Greek yogurt with honey and fresh figs on our balcony. We talked about anything except work. And for about 3 hours, I almost forgot. But at lunch, sitting at this little taverna by the water, something in me couldn't take it anymore. While Nathan was in the bathroom, I turned my phone back on. It exploded. Notifications stacked on top of each other. Texts, calls, voicemails, emails, all from the same few hours after I'd received the termination email. The first text was from Arjun, my assistant. "What is happening? Clients are freaking out. Josephine looks like she's going to have a stroke. Call me." The next was from Daniela in the legal department. "Elena, the Blackwood sisters are in full meltdown. Marcella just screamed at Josephine in front of everyone. I've never seen anything like it." Then I saw a text from Rex, our head of security. "They've asked me to revoke your access, but I'm having technical difficulties. You've got 48 hours before I have to comply." But the message that made me gasp out loud was from Thomas, our client services coordinator. 47 of our biggest clients are threatening to leave unless we get you back. They said they only signed because of your personal involvement. Josephine is beside herself. The board called an emergency meeting. What do you want us to do? 47 clients. That's over 80% of our high-value portfolio. Billions of dollars walking out the door. Because of me. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely scroll through the rest of the messages. Voicemails from clients themselves. People like Jonathan Leibowitz, who managed a hedge fund and had entrusted us with his personal fortune. Diana Chen, the tech CEO, who'd followed me from my last firm. The Rosenberg family, who'd been with me since I started. All saying variations of the same thing. If Elena's gone, we're gone. Nathan came back to the table and found me staring at my phone, tears streaming down my face. "What now?" he asked, alarmed. I looked up at him and something shifted inside me. The shock was wearing off. The hurt was still there. A jagged wound that would take time to heal. But now there was something else. A slow-burning ember of something that felt dangerously close to power. "I think," I said slowly, "I just realized how badly Josephine miscalculated. Let me back up a bit. You need to understand Blackwood Partners to understand what happened. The firm was founded by three sisters, Josephine, Marcella, and Regina Blackwood, who inherited their father's investment business. Josephine, the oldest, was CEO. She had the financial acumen and the killer instinct. Marcella, the middle sister, was the relationship builder, the one who made clients feel special. Regina, the youngest, handled operations and kept the machine running. I was hired by Marcella 6 years ago. She found me at a competitor where I'd hit a ceiling. Too young, too female, too ethnic, to advance beyond a certain point. Marcella saw something in me. She mentored me. Within a year, I was handling their top-tier clients. Within 3 years, I was bringing in more new business than anyone else at the firm. The thing is, wealth management isn't just about numbers. It's about trust. These clients aren't just handing over money. They're handing over their security, their children's futures, their legacies. They need to believe you care about those things as much as they do. And I did. I remembered their kids' names, their anniversaries, their food allergies. I called when they were sick. I sent handwritten notes. I answered their texts at midnight. Not because some management book told me to, but because I genuinely cared. The problem? About a year ago, Marcella got sick. Breast cancer, stage 3. She stepped away from day-to-day operations to focus on treatment. And something in Josephine changed. She'd always been the colder sister, the numbers person. But without Marcella as a buffer, Josephine's focus narrowed exclusively to the bottom line. Staff wellness programs? Cut. The annual client appreciation event? Downsized to a virtual webinar. The personal touches that Marcella had insisted made us special? Deemed inefficient. I pushed back, quietly at first, then more forcefully as I saw client satisfaction scores start to dip. I went around Josephine directly to Regina, who still had enough pull to preserve some of what made us different. Then came the final straw. 3 weeks before my wedding, Josephine called me into her office. "Elena, we need to talk about your client load. I'm concerned it's becoming unwieldy." I remember being confused. My clients were happy. Our retention rate was nearly 100%. "I'm handling it fine," I said. "The client satisfaction surveys." "This isn't about satisfaction," she cut me off. It's about efficiency. You're spending too much time on individual attention. We need to standardize our approach. Then she dropped the bomb. I'm reassigning the Petropolis account to Bradley. Bradley Winters, Harvard MBA, Josephine's new golden boy. The kind of guy who calls older women sweetheart and interrupts you to explain your own ideas back to you. Mr. Petropoulos specifically requested me, I argued. He won't stay if you move him. Josephine's smile was thin. We'll manage the transition. I've already discussed it with Bradley. Already discussed it. Without me, the account I'd brought in, the client who trusted me. I wish I could say I maintained my composure. I didn't. This is a mistake, I said, my voice rising. Bradley doesn't have the relationship skills for these clients. They don't want a template approach. They want someone who treats them like individuals. That's an outdated model, Josephine replied. Modern wealth management is about systems, not personalities. We can't have clients too attached to individual advisors. It creates vulnerability. I stared at her. These relationships are why they choose us over Goldman or Morgan Stanley. It's our differentiator. It was Marcella's approach, she said dismissively. And while my sister has many qualities, business strategy isn't one of them. That's when I knew. This wasn't about efficiency. This was a power play. With Marcella sidelined, Josephine was dismantling her sister's vision and replacing it with her own. And I was collateral damage. I left the meeting seething but professional. I had my wedding coming up, a honeymoon planned. I decided to let it lie until I returned. We could have a proper conversation when I wasn't stressed about seating charts and flower arrangements. Little did I know, Josephine had already made her decision. The rest of that day in Santorini is a blur. I remember Nathan canceling our sunset cruise. I remember sitting on our balcony making calls, the beautiful view completely wasted on me. I called Arjun first. My God, Elena, it's chaos here, he said. His voice hushed like he was hiding in a supply closet. Josephine announced your departure in yesterday's morning meeting like it was a normal staffing update. By noon, word had reached the clients. The Rosenbergs called first, then the Chens, then it was like dominoes. What exactly are they saying? I asked. That they'll pull their accounts if you're not reinstated, Mr. Lebowitz said. And I quote, I don't trust my money to algorithms and spreadsheets. I trust Elena. I felt a surge of gratitude so intense it nearly brought me to tears again. These people, many of whom I'd never even met in person because of COVID, were going to bat for me. Has Josephine reached out to you? Arjun asked. No, I said. Just the termination email. He made a disgusted sound. Regina's furious. She's saying Josephine made this decision unilaterally, without board approval. There's talk of an emergency vote. And Marcella? She showed up today. First time in months. She looked awful, still doing chemo, but she was on the warpath. I've never heard her raise her voice before. I hung up and immediately checked my email again. Still nothing from Josephine. Nothing from HR. It was like they'd thrown a grenade and then gone silent. I called Rex next, to understand what kind of access I still had. Then Daniela in legal, to find out where I stood contractually. Then I started returning client calls. Every conversation followed the same pattern. Shock and outrage on their behalf. Concern about what this meant for their accounts. And then, invariably, the question, what are you going to do next? By dinner time, my phone buzzed with a text from a number I didn't recognize. Elena, this is Regina Blackwood. We need to talk. Urgently. Can you call me on this personal number? I showed Nathan the text. He'd been sitting beside me for hours, bringing me water, taking notes, being my rock. Are you going to call her? He asked. I stared at the message for a long time. The old Elena, the people pleaser, the good employee, the woman who never rocked the boat, would have called immediately. Would have been pathetically grateful for the attention. But that Elena died on a bathroom floor in Santorini. Not yet, I said, setting down the phone. First, I need to figure out what I actually want. Nathan's eyes widened slightly. Then he smiled. A small, proud smile that made my heart lift for the first time that day. And what do you want? He asked. I looked out at the darkening Aegean Sea, at the lights coming on across the caldera, at the first stars appearing in the sky. I want them to know exactly what they've lost, I said. It's funny how clarity hits you sometimes. Not in a lightning bolt moment, but in these quiet little waves that add up until suddenly the path forward is just obvious. Nathan and I stayed up until 3 a.m. that night. The hotel balcony, a bottle of wine, 2 legal pads. We made lists. We ran numbers. We played out scenarios. Somewhere around 1 a.m., he looked at me across the table and said, "You know you don't have to go back there, right?" I blinked at him. "What do you mean?" "I mean these clients. They're following you, not the Blackwood name. You've essentially been running a business within a business for years." I'd never thought of it that way. I was so busy being a good employee, I'd ignored the leverage I'd built. These relationships weren't company assets. They were human connections. They were mine. By sunrise, I had a plan. Not a perfect one, not even a fully formed one, but a direction. I waited until Boston business hours and called Regina back. "Elena," she answered immediately. "Thank God. I've been trying to damage control this disaster since yesterday morning." "What exactly happened, Regina?" I kept my voice steady. She sighed heavily. "Josephine made an executive decision without consulting the board. She said your compensation package had become unsustainable, and that Bradley could maintain your client relationships at 60% of the cost." I actually laughed. It was so absurd. "And how's that working out for her?" The Leibowitz call alone was a 40-minute dress, down that ended with him threatening to tell every member of his golf club to pull their investments. The Chen portfolio is already in process to transfer. The Rosenbergs are livid. She paused. "We need you back, Elena. The board is meeting at 4 today." I took a deep breath. "I appreciate that, Regina, but I need you to understand something. Even if you vote to bring me back, I'm not sure I want to return to a company where the CEO can fire me on my honeymoon with a form email." Silence on the line. "What do you want?" she finally asked. Smart woman, getting right to negotiation. "I want to finish my honeymoon first," I said. "Then we'll talk terms." "Elena, we don't have that kind of time. Clients are moving their money now." "Then I suggest you find a way to stall them," I replied, "because I'm not cutting my honeymoon short to fix Josephine's mistake." After I hung up, Nathan looked at me with a mix of awe and concern. "You just stood up to Regina Blackwood," he said. I nodded, surprised at myself. "I did. Are you actually considering going back?" I stared out at the perfect blue sea. On my terms. Or not at all. I'd like to say I spent the rest of the honeymoon blissfully disconnected, focusing only on my new husband and the beautiful Greek islands. But that would be a lie. Every morning, I spent an hour returning client calls and emails. Not as a Blackwood employee, but as Elena, their trusted advisor who wanted to keep them informed. I never said I was coming back. I never said I wasn't. I just listened to their concerns and assured them I was working on a solution. The rest of each day, I tried to be present with Nathan. We hiked, we swam, we ate incredible food, we made love in our ridiculously expensive hotel room. But always, in the back of my mind, gears were turning. On day 5, Regina texted, "Board voted 2-1 to offer you your position back. Josephine opposed." Of course she did. I replied, "Thank you. We'll discuss when I return." On day 7, Arjun texted that Bradley had been pulled from a client call after he couldn't answer basic questions about the Petropoulos portfolio structure. Mr. Petropoulos had apparently said, "Get me someone who knows what they're talking about or get me Elena." On day 9, Marcella called from her personal phone. "Elena." Her voice was weaker than I remembered, strained from her treatments. "I'm so sorry about all this. I never would have let it happen if I'd known." My anger softened a bit. Marcella had always been good to me. "I know that," I said. "How are you feeling?" "Like hell," she answered honestly. "But the doctors are optimistic. Another round of chemo, then surgery." She paused. "The firm needs you, Elena. I need you." I closed my eyes. That's the thing about manipulation. It still works even when you recognize it. "Marcella, I appreciate that. but Josephine made her position very clear. Josephine is. She searched for words. My sister is brilliant with numbers, but terrible with people. Always has been. She sees relationships as inefficiencies. That's a fundamental difference in business philosophy, I said. Yes, Marcella agreed. And that difference is destroying what my father built. Her voice cracked. Please, just come to a meeting when you get back. Hear our offer. I promised I would listen. Nothing more. I spent the last day of my honeymoon drafting an email to my most loyal clients. Not a mass email, individual messages to each of them. Personalized, addressing their specific concerns. I didn't send them. Not yet. But they were ready. We flew back to Boston on a Sunday. Monday morning, I dressed carefully. A charcoal gray suit, my best silk blouse, the pearl earrings my grandmother left me. Armor. You look like you're going to war, Nathan observed as I applied my lipstick. I caught his eye in the mirror. I am. The Blackwood offices occupy 3 floors of a gleaming tower overlooking Boston Harbor. I'd spent more time in that building than in my own apartment for the past 6 years. As I walked through the glass doors, the security guard did a double take. Mrs. Christakos. Reeves now, right? We didn't expect. I have a meeting. I cut him off politely, sliding my now useless badge across the desk. Can you let them know I'm here? The executive conference room was on the top floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views that were supposed to impress clients. All 3 Blackwood sisters were waiting, along with Harold Chen from the board and someone I didn't recognize, a woman in her 50s with a severe bob and a legal pad. Josephine stood first, extending her hand like we were meeting for the first time. Elena, thank you for coming. I shook her hand but said nothing, taking the seat across from her. Regina looked anxious. Marcella exhausted but determined. I want to begin by acknowledging that the handling of your position elimination was unfortunate, Josephine began, reading from prepared notes. Unfortunate, I repeated flatly. Yes, the timing was poor and the communication method was impersonal. For that, I apologize. The woman with the legal pad nodded approvingly. Ah, the PR handler, of course. However, Josephine continued, I stand by the business decision. We needed to restructure client services for scalability and efficiency. I folded my hands on the table. And how is that restructuring going, Josephine? Regina shifted uncomfortably. Marcella stared at her sister. There have been challenges, Josephine admitted, which is why we've asked you here. The board has voted to create a new position, Executive Client Relations Director. You would report directly to the board, not to me. Your compensation would increase by 15%, plus an expanded equity package. I looked at each of them in turn. And you believe that solves the problem? We believe it acknowledges your value to the firm, Regina said, and creates a structure where this kind of misunderstanding couldn't happen again. Misunderstanding. What a sanitized word for betrayal. I'm curious, I said, addressing Josephine directly. Did you actually think the clients wouldn't care? That Bradley could just step in and they'd accept it? She stiffened. We underestimated the personal attachments. That's a fair criticism. It's not about personal attachments, I said, leaning forward. It's about trust. These people entrust us with their financial security, their children's futures, their retirements. That's intensely personal. They don't trust Blackwood Partners. They trust specific people at Blackwood Partners. Marcella nodded. That's what I've been saying for 20 years. So, Harold Chen spoke for the first time. Will you accept our offer? I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. No, I said simply. I won't. Josephine's face darkened. Elena, be reasonable. You're not going to find a better compensation package elsewhere. I don't want to be someone else's asset anymore, I said, sliding papers across the table to each of them. This is my counter-proposal. They all stared at the document titled Christakos Partners, LLC. You're starting your own firm? Regina asked, eyes wide. I already have, I replied. Filed the paperwork last week. I've secured financing based on commitments from clients representing over $2 billion in assets. The room went silent. The PR woman was scribbling frantically. This would destroy Blackwood, Josephine said, her voice deadly quiet. Not necessarily, I said. That's why I'm here. I'm proposing a managed transition, an official spin-off, with Blackwood maintaining a minority stake. My clients move with me, but your company preserves some of the value and avoids a mass exodus. Harold Chen was reading my proposal with increasing interest. A strategic partnership, he mused. Exactly. Blackwood gets a revenue share without the overhead of my team. I get independence and control over client relationships. I looked directly at Josephine. Everyone gets what they actually want. This is absurd, Josephine snapped. We'll challenge this legally. Your client relationships were developed while employed here. There are non-competes. That mysteriously disappeared from my contract during my last renewal. I finished for her. I checked with legal before I left. And since you terminated me without cause, any remaining restrictions are unenforceable. Marcella let out a sound between a laugh and a cough. She's got you, Joe. You knew about this? Josephine turned on her sister. No, Marcella replied. But I'm not surprised. Elena was always smarter than you gave her credit for. She turned to me. What would this partnership look like practically? For the next hour, we hashed out details. Harold and Regina asked pointed questions. The PR woman stopped taking notes and just listened, wide-eyed. Josephine said almost nothing, her lips pressed into a thin line. By the time we finished, we hadn't reached a final agreement, but the outlines were clear. I would establish Christakos Partners with my core clients. Blackwood would maintain a 20% stake, ensuring they didn't lose everything. Most importantly, I would have complete autonomy over client relationships and business development. We'll need to take this to the full board, Harold said finally. I nodded and stood. You have 48 hours. After that, I send my announcements to clients. As I gathered my things, Josephine finally spoke again. You planned this all along, didn't you? Built up your client relationships knowing you'd eventually take them. I met her gaze evenly. No, Josephine. I built relationships because that's what good advisors do. I loved this company. I defended it. I recruited for it. I canceled plans and missed holidays for it. I slipped my folder back into my bag. You taught me something valuable, though. Never confuse loyalty to a company with loyalty to your own worth. I walked out of that conference room with my heart pounding but my steps steady. In the elevator, I finally let myself exhale, leaning against the wall as the doors closed. My phone buzzed with a text from Nathan. How did it go? I smiled and typed back, I just became a CEO. The next 48 hours were a blur. More meetings, lawyers, phone calls with potential staff starting with Arjun, who accepted my offer on the spot. The board approved my proposal, with one change. They wanted 30% ownership. I counter-offered at 22%. We settled at 25%. 1 week after returning from my honeymoon, I signed papers establishing a formal partnership between Blackwood Partners and the newly formed Christakos Partners. 3 weeks after that, we moved into our own offices, smaller, but with the same harbor view. The transition wasn't perfectly smooth. Bradley tried to convince some of my clients to stay. A few of the smaller ones did. But the core relationships, the Leibowitzes, the Chens, the Rosenbergs, the Petropoulos account, they all came with me. In the end, I took 52 clients representing nearly 65% of Blackwood's high net worth portfolio. Josephine resigned 2 months later. Pursuing other opportunities, the press release said, Regina became CEO, with Marcella taking a more active board role as her health improved. It's been 18 months now. Christakos Partners is thriving. We've even stolen a few key employees from Blackwood, including Daniela from legal and Rex from security. I work just as hard as I ever did, but now every late night and weekend email feels different. It's mine. Nathan and I bought a house outside the city. Sometimes when I can't sleep, I still think about that moment in Santorini sobbing on the bathroom floor, feeling like my world had ended. I think about how close I came to begging for my job back. Last week, Marcella invited me to lunch. Her cancer is in remission. Her hair is growing back, silvery at the temples. You know, she said as we shared a bottle of wine, when Josephine sent that email, I nearly disowned her. But now, she gestured between us. At the successful businesswomen we'd both become, I almost want to thank her. I laughed. I wouldn't go that far. Fair enough, she smiled. But look what you've built, Elena. Would you have ever done it if you hadn't been pushed? I thought about it honestly. Probably not. Sometimes the worst moments crack us open in ways we need, she said. Not that I'm defending her. What she did was cruel and stupid. And the best thing that ever happened to me, I admitted. We clinked glasses to that. So if you're watching this and you're in that bathroom floor moment, the one where you feel like everything is collapsing, I want you to know something. You're stronger than you think you are. That thing you're afraid to do, the leap you're terrified to take, sometimes the universe pushes you when you won't jump yourself. When Josephine fired me, she thought she was eliminating a cost center. What she really did was create her biggest competitor. The best revenge isn't something you plot and scheme. It's not about making someone else suffer. It's about taking the blow and transforming it into something powerful. It's about becoming more fully yourself. That email was meant to end my career. Instead, it forced me to begin. So be angry. Cry on the bathroom floor. Feel everything you need to feel. Then get up, wash your face, and start building. Because sometimes getting fired isn't the end of your story. It's the first page. I'm not worried about replacing you. The words punched through the air between us as I sat across from him. My quarterly performance report splayed open on his desk. The pages showed exactly how I generated $2.8 million in just 3 months, shattering every sales record in our company's 30-year history. Even with these numbers, I managed, keeping my voice level despite the sudden hollow feeling spreading through my chest. He glanced at the report with practiced indifference. Numbers aren't everything, Quinn. Anyone could do what you do given the right circumstances. Anyone. The word stung worse than it should have. 13-hour days, weekends spent studying client production systems, custom proposals tailored to each business's unique challenges, all dismissed with a single word. I see, I said, watching as he tapped his gold pen against my report, the pen he'd bought after collecting the bonus my sales had earned him. About your commission, he continued, sliding a paper toward me. We're capping it at standard rates. Company policy. I stared at the figure. It was less than a quarter of what I'd earned based on our agreed structure. This isn't what we discussed when I took this position. He shrugged. Exceptional circumstances require adjustments. The board feels your numbers are anomalous. We can't set compensation precedents based on outliers. Outliers. That's what he called breaking every sales record in company history. I've brought in more revenue than the entire Eastern Division combined, I said quietly. And we appreciate that, he replied, not bothering to look up as he closed my file. But let's be realistic. You got lucky with timing and market conditions. Lightning doesn't strike twice. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder, more calculated. The Merston account renewed today, I said. 3-year contract. They doubled their order. This got his attention. Merston was our biggest client. He'd been trying to land them for years before I arrived. They specifically asked for you? They did. He leaned back, a small smile forming. Well, I'll handle them going forward. They need a more experienced touch. He glanced at his watch. Is there anything else? I have a leadership meeting in 5. Leadership. As if he'd done anything to earn the title beyond taking credit for others' work. No, I said, gathering my things. Nothing else. As I reached the door, he called after me. Quinn? I meant what I said. You're replaceable. Everyone is. I turned, meeting his eyes. Interesting perspective. What he didn't know was that I'd recorded our entire conversation. What he couldn't see was that in my purse sat signed letters from our 5 largest clients. What he couldn't possibly imagine was that I'd spent the last month preparing for exactly this moment. He thought I was replaceable. He was about to learn how wrong he was. If you're feeling that knot in your stomach right now, that mix of outrage and anticipation, take a quick second to hit like and subscribe. Trust me, you'll want to see how Quinn turns this situation around, and I'd hate for you to miss the moment her boss realizes exactly who he's dealing with. My name is Quinn Tandy, and until that quarterly review, I'd believed hard work spoke for itself. Growing up in Cedar Springs, a small town dominated by 3 manufacturing plants, I watched how business worked from both sides. My mother operated a small machine shop that served the larger factories, and from age 12, I spent afternoons there, learning how each component fit into the larger systems. When sales representatives visited, I observed the dance, the promises, the technical jargon, the handshakes. Most of all, I noticed which promises were kept and which weren't. When I was 16, a slick salesman convinced my mother to invest in an automated lathe system. "It'll triple your production capacity," he'd promised. What he didn't mention were the compatibility issues with our existing equipment, the specialized training required, or the proprietary software that came with crippling annual fees. 6 months later, the bank took everything. After college, I swore I'd never be that kind of salesperson. With my mechanical engineering degree and first-hand understanding of production challenges, I took a different approach. When I joined Integrated Manufacturing Solutions 18 months ago, I didn't see clients as commission checks. I saw people with problems I could actually solve. My boss, Devin, had built his career on high-pressure tactics and upselling clients on equipment they didn't need. The sales team followed his example, pushing whatever carried the highest margins regardless of client needs. They moved fast, closed quickly, and rarely heard from clients again. My first week, Devin pulled me aside after I spent 3 days researching a client's operation before making recommendations. "You're wasting time," he said. "Here's how we do things. Pitch the premium package, create urgency, close within 2 calls. Simple." I nodded, but continued my approach. When my first client renewed their contract and ordered additional equipment within a month, Devin dismissed it as beginner's luck. When it happened again, he called it coincidence. By the end of my first quarter, I'd outperformed every other team member by 60%. That's when the atmosphere changed. Devin began scheduling client meetings when I was unavailable. Information about new leads mysteriously failed to reach my desk. My access to certain client files became temporarily restricted due to system updates. Still, word spread. Clients began asking for me specifically. The manufacturing world is smaller than most realize. Plant managers talk. Production heads share information. My name started circulating as someone who actually understood production challenges. 6 months in, I doubled the previous annual sales record. Devin's response was to implement a team selling approach, where he joined all my client meetings. Suddenly, my solutions became our recommendations, and eventually, Devin's strategic approach. In company-wide emails, Devin positioned himself as the architect of this revolutionary client-centered methodology. In reality, he was actively undermining it, pushing team members to continue aggressive sales tactics while taking credit for my results. What changed everything was the Merston contract. For years, this international manufacturing giant had purchased minimum orders from us, spread across multiple divisions, with no centralized approach. Devin had tried and failed to consolidate their business. I spent weekends studying Merston's entire operation, identifying inefficiencies between their divisions. Instead of pitching products, I presented a comprehensive analysis showing how integrated systems could reduce their production costs by 22%. Their executive team was stunned. "You understand our challenges better than we do," their operations director said. The resulting contract was unprecedented: unified equipment solutions across all divisions, a 3-year commitment, and a value of $1.8 million. It single-handedly boosted company revenue by 40%. The morning after signing, I arrived to find Devin presenting his Merston strategy to the executive team. I wasn't invited to the meeting. That afternoon, my performance metrics disappeared from the company dashboard. When I inquired, I was told there had been data integration issues. My commission check that month was calculated incorrectly, missing the Merston numbers entirely. "Accounting error," Devin assured me. "We'll correct it next cycle." They never did. I began keeping detailed records of everything: emails, contracts, client communications. I recorded meetings, saved voicemails, and documented every interaction with Devin. Something fundamental had changed inside me. The naive belief that excellence would be recognized had died. 3 more major accounts followed Merston's lead, each choosing our company specifically because of my approach. By the 3rd quarter, I managed relationships representing 70% of total company revenue. Our stock price climbed 30%. Devin received a Leadership Excellence Award and a six-figure bonus. I received a coffee mug with the company logo. Then came the Wilson opportunity. Wilson Manufacturing was the industry giant, the white whale every sales team chased. Their equipment purchases influenced the entire sector. Landing them would transform our company overnight. Through a connection at Merston, I secured a meeting with Wilson's procurement team. They were skeptical but agreed to hear my pitch. Rather than pushing products, I spent 3 weeks analyzing their operations, identifying specific bottlenecks in their production flow. My presentation to their executive team was scheduled for a Monday. The Friday before, Devin called me into his office. "Great news," he said. "I'll be handling the Wilson presentation. The CEO wants a senior leader managing this relationship." "But I've done all the preparation," I protested. "I know their systems inside out. Just send me your notes," he replied. "This is too important to leave to chance." That weekend, I sent him a truncated version of my analysis, keeping the key insights to myself. Monday morning, I called Wilson's VP of Operations directly. "There's been a miscommunication," I explained. "I wanted to personally assure you that I'll remain your primary contact throughout this process." "That's not what we heard," he replied. "Your boss informed us yesterday that he'd be overseeing our account personally." The conversation confirmed what I'd suspected. Devin had already contacted them, positioning himself as the visionary while relegating me to a supporting role. The Wilson presentation went forward with Devin at the helm. Without my complete analysis, he fumbled technical questions and made promises our systems couldn't fulfill. The Wilson team, initially excited, grew increasingly skeptical. When they asked about specific integration challenges I'd previously identified, Devin dismissed their concerns as easily manageable without providing details. They left unconvinced. Later that week, Wilson signed with our main competitor. Devin called an emergency team meeting. "We lost Wilson because our materials weren't persuasive enough," he announced, looking directly at me. "Some team members need to remember that sales is about relationships, not just technical details." As others nodded, something crystallized within me. This wasn't just about recognition or commission. Devin's approach was actively harming clients, our company, and everyone's livelihood except his own. That night, I made a decision. I began by mapping the company's entire client relationship structure, identifying which accounts were truly mine versus which belonged to the company. I studied our supplier contracts, territory agreements, and non-compete clauses with forensic precision. What I discovered changed everything. Most of our exclusive supplier relationships weren't with the company at all. They were tied to Devin's position. The territory rights, the preferential pricing, the priority fulfillment guarantees, all were contractually assigned to the senior sales director rather than the company itself. Devin had created a structure where he was indispensable while ensuring everyone else remained replaceable. Or so he thought. The quarterly review where he told me I was replaceable wasn't just an insult, it was the final confirmation I needed. As I walked out of his office that day, my plan was already taking shape. That evening after the quarterly review, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by stacks of contracts, supplier agreements, and client records. A half-empty glass of Cabernet balanced precariously on a tower of files as I traced connections between accounts. 3 things had become crystal clear. First, our clients were loyal to me, not the company. Second, Devin had structured the supplier agreements to make himself seemingly irreplaceable. Third, he had no idea how thoroughly I understood the business architecture he'd built. The next morning, I arrived at work an hour early. The office was nearly empty, just the night security guard finishing his shift and the receptionist setting up coffee. "Morning, Quinn," she said. "You're here before even Devin today." I smiled. Big day ahead. I headed straight to the server room. As the person who managed our largest client relationships, I had access to our entire client database, Access. Devin had never bothered to restrict because he couldn't imagine anyone understanding the full picture. For the next 45 minutes, I downloaded specific documents, not client lists or proprietary information, but rather the structural agreements that governed our business relationships, the territorial exclusivity contracts, the supplier relationship terms, the commission structure frameworks. None of this was confidential from me. I was authorized to see it all. I was simply creating a personal reference archive. By the time Devon strolled in at 9:15, I was at my desk, calmly reviewing proposals for the Thompson account. "Quinn," he said, stopping by my desk, "I need the Merston renewal paperwork for the executive meeting this afternoon." "Already sent it to your email," I replied without looking up. along with the updated projections you asked for. He lingered, perhaps surprised by my lack of visible reaction to yesterday's review. Finally, he said, "Good. And remember, I'll handle all communication with them going forward." I looked up and smiled pleasantly. Of course. The moment he walked away, I sent a text to Laurel Murston, their operations director. "Lunch today? Need to discuss implementation timeline. The usual place? 12:30? Her response came immediately. "See you there." Over the next 3 hours, I made 7 similar arrangements with key clients. Not a single communication went through company channels. Not a single meeting appeared on my calendar. At 12:15, I walked past Devon's office, heading to grab lunch. Back in an hour. He barely glanced up. "Try not to be late. We have the staff meeting at 2. The restaurant was a small bistro 10 blocks from the office, far enough that no one from the company ever went there. Laurel was already seated when I arrived, nursing a sparkling water. "Quinn," she said warmly, "I was surprised to get your text. Devon called this morning saying he'd be our new point person. That's actually why I wanted to meet," I said, sliding into the booth. "Things are changing at the company, and I wanted to give you advance notice." Her expression tightened. "What kind of changes?" "I'm considering new opportunities," I said carefully, "and I wanted to discuss what that might mean for clients I've worked closely with." For the next 30 minutes, I laid out specific concerns, how Devon's approach differed from mine, the push toward higher margin products, regardless of fit, the likelihood that the personalized solutions I'd developed would be replaced by standardized packages. I never disparaged the company directly. I never breached confidentiality. I simply presented facts about differences in sales philosophy. "This is concerning," Laurel said finally. "We renewed specifically because of your approach. The board approved the contract based on the customized implementation plan you developed." I nodded. "I understand, and I want to be clear. I haven't made any decisions yet. I simply felt you deserved transparency." "What would you do?" she asked bluntly. "If you were in my position?" I took a sip of water. "I'd review the contract termination clauses, just to understand your options." As I walked back to the office, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Laurel. "Just checked. 30-day written notice required for termination without cause. Interesting timing. We have our quarterly review next week." I smiled. The first domino was tipping. Over the next 3 days, I had similar conversations with 7 other key clients. Not once did I suggest they leave the company. Not once did I make promises about future arrangements. I simply provided information about the changing internal dynamics and let them draw their own conclusions. By Friday, my phone was buzzing constantly with texts from concerned clients. Each conversation followed the same pattern. They'd received calls from Devon introducing himself as their new account manager. They were concerned about changes to their customized solutions, and they were reviewing their contract terms. Meanwhile, Devon remained oblivious. In the Friday staff meeting, he announced a new standardized solution approach to streamline our offerings. "We're spending too much time on customization," he explained. "The new model will focus on 3 core packages with minimal modifications. This will increase our margins by an estimated 30%. Across the table, our technical director frowned. "But Quinn's customized approach is what's driving our record numbers." Devon smiled thinly. "That model isn't sustainable or scalable. We're making this change effective immediately." As the meeting disbanded, Devon pulled me aside. "I need you to transition all your client notes and relationship details to me by Monday. Complete documentation." "Complete documentation," I repeated. "Of course. I'll have everything ready." That weekend, I made 2 critical moves. First, I compiled detailed files on each client relationship, their production challenges, their specific needs, the solutions we'd implemented, and the results achieved. These were immaculate, thorough, and completely useless without the context and relationships I'd built. Like handing someone sheet music when they couldn't read a note. Second, I contacted Vince Reynolds, a former colleague who had started his own manufacturing consultancy. We met at a quiet cafe on Sunday afternoon. "I've been hoping you'd call," he said after I outlined the situation. "I've been watching your success from afar. Impressive doesn't begin to cover it." "I'm exploring options," I said carefully. He leaned forward. "Let me be direct. Join my firm as a partner. Bring your approach. We'll split everything 50-50. No corporate politics, no ceiling on commissions, and complete control over client relationships." "I have non-compete clauses," I pointed out. He smiled. "I've reviewed them. They prevent you from selling competing products within the territory. They don't prevent you from consulting on implementation, optimization, or strategy. The difference is significant legally. I considered his offer. I need time to think about it. Of course, he said, sliding a folder across the table. But when you decide, this partnership agreement is ready for your signature. Monday morning arrived with a strange calm. I placed the client documentation on Devon's desk before he arrived, then returned to my office. At exactly 9, my phone rang. It was Richard from Wilson Manufacturing, the account we'd lost. Quinn, he said without preamble, we're reconsidering our equipment decisions. Are you available to discuss options? I'd be happy to, I replied. But I should mention that all client relationships are being transitioned to our sales director. There was a pause. We're specifically requesting you. If that's not possible, we'll pursue other options. Let me see what I can arrange, I said. I'll call you back this afternoon. I walked directly to Devon's office. He was reviewing my client files with visible frustration. There's nothing useful here, he complained. Just technical specifications and implementation notes. Where are the relationship details? The personal information? The leverage points? That's everything, I said simply. Those relationships were built on understanding their technical needs, not leveraging personal information, he scowled. Wilson Manufacturing called. They want to reconsider their decision, but they're asking specifically for you. I just heard from them as well, I said. Devon's expression shifted to calculation. I'll handle the initial meeting. You can attend as support. Actually, I countered, they specifically said they want me to lead the discussion. They were quite clear about that condition. His face flushed. Fine, set it up, but I'll be there. I nodded. Of course. As I turned to leave, he added, and Quinn, remember who you work for. I smiled politely. I never forget that, Devon. The Wilson meeting was scheduled for Wednesday morning. By Tuesday afternoon, something unusual happened. Devon's calendar suddenly cleared, and he announced he needed to handle an emergency with another client. You'll have to take the Wilson meeting alone, he told me, not bothering to hide his irritation. But I expect a complete briefing immediately after. I maintained a neutral expression. No problem. I'll handle it. What Devon didn't know was that the emergency had been carefully orchestrated. 3 of our major clients had simultaneously requested urgent meetings with him for Tuesday afternoon. Each had different concerns that only the sales director could address. Each had been strategically encouraged to reach out by their colleagues at other companies, colleagues I had built relationships with over the past year. The Wilson meeting went exactly as planned. I presented a comprehensive analysis of their production challenges, identifying 3 specific bottlenecks that were costing them millions annually. My proposed solution was elegant, practical, and significantly less expensive than what they'd contracted with our competitor. This is remarkable, Richard said as I concluded. Why weren't these insights shared in the previous presentation? I chose my words carefully. Different approaches to client solutions, I suppose. Well, we're prepared to move forward, he said, contingent on you managing the implementation personally. I maintained a professional tone. I should note that our company is transitioning to a model where the sales director oversees all major accounts. Richard exchanged glances with his team. That would be a deal breaker for us. We want your approach, your expertise, and your attention to our specific needs. I understand, I said. Let me discuss this internally and get back to you. When I returned to the office, Devon was waiting impatiently. Well, did they sign? They're ready to, I reported. A 3-year contract valued at approximately $2 million. His eyes widened. That's nearly double what we originally proposed. Yes, I agreed. But there's a condition. They want me to personally manage the implementation. Devon waved dismissively. Standard negotiation tactic. Once they've signed, we can transition them however we want. They were quite adamant, I pressed. They specifically said it was a deal breaker. He narrowed his eyes. Handle it however you need to. Just get them signed by Friday. He paused, then added with a thin smile. Good work, Quinn. See? The team approach is already paying dividends. I nodded and returned to my office, where I immediately emailed Richard. Contract looks good. One modification needed on section 5.3 regarding account management. We'll send revised version tomorrow. The modified contract would include language specifying that Wilson's relationship was contingent on my direct involvement, with a 30-day termination option if management changed. Devon would never read the fine print. He never did. He trusted the legal team, who reported directly to him and did exactly what he asked. But I had developed a good relationship with Natalie in legal over the past year, bonding over our shared frustration with Devon's methods. She would ensure the language passed through without raising alarms. By Thursday afternoon, 4 more major clients had requested similar contract modifications. Each wanted assurance that their relationship was with me specifically, not just the company. Each insisted on termination clauses tied to account management changes. Devin, focused on closing numbers before the end of the quarter, approved everything without scrutiny. Each signed contract was another piece of leverage carefully put into place. Friday morning, Devin called an impromptu celebration. Thanks to our new team approach, we've secured Wilson Manufacturing and renewed 4 major accounts. Drinks after work are on me. As the team cheered, his phone rang. His smile faltered as he listened. What do you mean, verification? The contracts are signed. Yes, I understand it's a large amount. Fine, schedule it for Monday. He hung up, visibly annoyed. Compliance wants to review the Wilson contract before processing. Bureaucratic nonsense. I maintained a neutral expression. Standard procedure for accounts that size. He shot me a suspicious look. You seem unconcerned. I shrugged. The contract is solid. Nothing to worry about. What Devin didn't realize was that Monday would bring much more than a compliance review. Monday would be the day everything changed. Over the weekend, I finalized my preparations. I organized all documentation, confirmed meeting schedules, and reviewed my options one last time. The path forward was clear, but timing would be everything. Monday morning arrived with a sense of inevitability. I dressed with particular care, charcoal pencil skirt, cream blouse, and the one luxury I'd allowed myself after the Merston deal, a pair of Valentino pumps that clicked with quiet authority on marble floors. In the elevator up to our office, I checked my phone. 5 text messages had arrived since dawn. From Laurel at Merston, board meeting at 11, decision will be made today. From Richard at Wilson, compliance call scheduled for 10:30, standing firm on our requirements. From Vince, partnership paperwork filed, ready when you are. From Natalie in legal, Devin still hasn't reviewed Section 5.3 amendments, moving forward as discussed. From Terry, our CFO, need to speak with you before the executive meeting. My office, 9:15. The last message was unexpected. Terry and I had a cordial professional relationship, but we rarely communicated directly. As the company's financial officer, he saw all the numbers, including exactly how much revenue I'd generated versus what I'd been paid. The office was unusually quiet when I arrived. Devin's door was closed, which was typical on Monday mornings. He usually spent the first hour calling his golf buddies about their weekend games while pretending to review sales forecasts. At precisely 9:15, I knocked on Terry's door. "Come in, Quinn," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. Unlike Devin's office with its ostentatious displays of success, Terry's space was minimalist and practical. "I've been reviewing the Wilson contract," he said without preamble. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. "It's a significant deal. 3 years. Full systems integration." Terry nodded slowly. "Section 5.3 is interesting. Standard account management language," I said mildly. "No," Terry countered. "It's not. It specifically names you as the exclusive point of contact, with a 30-day termination option if you're removed from the account." I held his gaze. The client insisted. As did Merston, Crawford Technologies, Zendex Manufacturing, and Brightline Industries, he continued. 5 major accounts, all with nearly identical language, all representing 78% of our projected quarterly revenue. The percentage was actually 83%, but I didn't correct him. "The clients value consistency," I offered. Terry leaned forward. "Quinn, what's going on? This isn't just about account management, is it?" I considered my options carefully. Terry had always been fair, focusing on numbers rather than office politics. He'd also been the one who questioned my commission reductions, though he'd been overruled by Devin. "The clients are concerned about changes in our approach," I said carefully. "They've built relationships based on customized solutions rather than standardized packages." "Devin's new model," Terry said, nodding. "He presented it to the executive team last week, promised a 30% increase in margins, at the cost of client satisfaction and retention," I added. Terry was quiet for a moment. "You know there's an executive meeting at 11:30? Devin's presenting the quarterly projections, including the Wilson deal." "I'm aware. Are you planning to be there?" "I wasn't invited," I replied. Terry's mouth tightened. "You should be. I'll fix that." He paused. "One more question, Quinn. If these clients have termination options tied to your involvement, what happens if you leave?" I smiled slightly. "That would be unfortunate for the company, wouldn't it?" As I left Terry's office, my phone buzzed again. A text from Richard at Wilson. Compliance call complete. They seem concerned about Section 5.3, holding firm as discussed. At 10:15, Devin finally emerged from his office, looking irritated. He spotted me and strode over. Wilson is being difficult about some contract language, he snapped. Fix it. They're insisting on keeping you as their point person. I'm happy to continue working with them, I said. That's not the point, he hissed. No client dictates our internal structure. Tell them it's non-negotiable. If I do that, they'll likely invoke the termination clause, I pointed out. His face flushed. What termination clause? Section 5.3, the account management provision with the 30-day exit option. Devin stared at me. Show me. I pulled up the contract on my tablet and handed it to him. He scanned the section, his expression darkening. This wasn't in the standard template, he said slowly. The client requested specific language. Legal approved it. Without consulting me? The email approvals are all there, I said, swiping to show the communication chain. You signed off on Tuesday afternoon. Devin's jaw tightened as he recognized his own cursory response. Looks fine. Move forward. This is unacceptable, he said, handing back the tablet. I want this provision removed immediately. The contract is already executed, I reminded him. Both parties have signed. Any changes would require renegotiation. Then renegotiate, he snapped. I can try, I said doubtfully. But they were quite firm about this point. Devin checked his watch. I have the executive meeting in an hour. Fix this by then. As he stormed off, my phone buzzed with an email notification. It was from Terry, copying me on a meeting update. Adding Quinn Tandy to today's executive review as the primary account manager for our 5 largest clients. At 11:20, I made my way to the executive conference room. Through the glass walls, I could see the leadership team assembling: Terry, our CFO, Marissa, the chief operating officer, Paolo, the chief technology officer, and Eleanor, our CEO. Devin was at the front of the room, arranging presentation materials. When I entered, he looked up in surprise. Quinn? This is an executive meeting. I invited her, Terry said before I could respond. Given that we're discussing accounts she manages. Devin's smile tightened. Actually, as I'll be covering in my presentation, we're transitioning to a team management approach. I'll be overseeing our key accounts directly. Eleanor, our CEO, looked between us with interest. Let's get started, shall we? Devin launched into his presentation with practiced confidence. Charts showed our record-breaking quarter. Graphs illustrated the unprecedented growth. Every slide reinforced a single narrative. The company was thriving under his leadership. As you can see, Devin said, advancing to a slide titled Strategic Vision, our new standardized solution model promises even greater margins in the coming quarters. We've already begun implementing this approach with our top accounts. Including Wilson Manufacturing? Eleanor asked. Absolutely, Devin confirmed. They've just signed a 3-year agreement worth $3.2 million, a testament to our new direction. Interesting, Eleanor said, because I received a call from Richard Wilson this morning expressing concerns about changes to their account management. Devin faltered momentarily before recovering. Minor miscommunication, nothing to worry about. He specifically mentioned Section 5.3 of their contract, Eleanor continued. Something about account management continuity? All eyes turned to me. I remained silent, waiting. Devin cleared his throat. A standard provision simply confirms our commitment to quality service. It's not standard, Terry interjected. It specifically names Quinn as their exclusive point of contact and includes a 30-day termination option if she's removed from the account. Marissa leaned forward. Is this true? Devin's confident facade cracked slightly. A minor detail that we're adjusting. And Merston? Terry continued. And Crawford? And Zendex? And Brightline? All have identical provisions. The room went silent. I've also reviewed our supplier agreements, Terry added, opening a folder. Particularly interesting is the territorial exclusivity language. Rather than assigning rights to the company, they're specifically tied to the senior sales director position. Devin's face paled. That's standard industry practice. No, Terry countered. It's not. It creates a situation where supplier relationships are tied to a position rather than the organization. Eleanor fixed Devin with a penetrating stare. So, if you were to leave, we'd lose both our client base due to these special provisions and our supplier relationships due to the territorial language? Before Devin could respond, the conference room door opened. The receptionist looked apologetic for interrupting. I'm sorry, but there's an urgent situation. Representatives from Merston, Wilson, Crawford, Zendex, and Brightline are all on a conference call. They say it's regarding their contracts. Eleanor stood. Put them through to this room. The large screen on the wall flickered to life, revealing a split screen of 5 serious-faced executives. "Good morning," Eleanor began. "This is unexpected." Laurel from Merston spoke first. "We apologize for the interruption, but we felt it necessary to address concerns directly. It's come to our attention that your company is changing its approach to client solutions and account management. We've invested in relationships built on customized solutions that address our specific production challenges," Richard from Wilson added. "Any shift away from that approach would force us to reconsider our partnership. Specifically," Laurel continued, "we understand that Quinn Tandy's role is being diminished despite language in our contracts, ensuring her continued involvement." Eleanor turned to Devon, her expression hardening. "Is this accurate?" Devon swallowed visibly. "There's been a misunderstanding. Quinn remains a valued team member." "That's not what she told us," Richard countered. "She informed us that management was transitioning to a standardized solution model with account oversight shifting to the sales director." All eyes in the room turned to me. "Quinn?" Eleanor prompted. "I simply provided factual information about internal changes when clients asked," I said calmly. "As Devon announced in Friday's staff meeting, we're moving to 3 standardized packages with minimal customization to increase margins by 30%. Devon's expression shifted from shock to fury. "You deliberately undermined company strategy." "I ensured clients had accurate information about changes affecting their operations," I corrected. "Transparency is part of the trust I've built with them." "This is insubordination," Devon snapped. Eleanor raised a hand to silence him. "Let me understand this clearly. Our 5 largest clients all have contracts allowing termination if Quinn is removed from their accounts. Meanwhile, our supplier agreements are structured so that if Devon leaves, we lose territorial exclusivity." "That's correct," Terry confirmed. Eleanor looked at the screen. "What exactly are you asking for?" Laurel spoke for the group. "We value Quinn's approach to our needs. We want assurance that this approach will continue without interference or arbitrary restrictions." Eleanor considered this, then turned to me. "Quinn, what's your perspective here?" The room fell silent. This was the moment everything hinged upon. I took a measured breath before speaking. "For 18 months, I've built relationships based on understanding client needs and developing solutions that actually solve their problems. This approach has broken every sales record in company history. The clients have made their preferences clear. And if those preferences aren't honored?" Eleanor asked. I met her gaze directly. "Then the company risks losing 83% of its current revenue within 30 days. Devon slammed his hand on the table. "This is blackmail." "No," I replied evenly. "This is consequences." Eleanor studied me for a long moment. "What would you propose as a solution?" "A restructuring," I said simply. "One that aligns company interests with client needs and properly values those who generate results." The tension in the room was palpable as Eleanor considered her options. Devon glared at me with naked hatred, while the executive team exchanged uncertain glances. Finally, Eleanor nodded. "We'll take a brief recess to discuss this internally. Please give us 30 minutes. As the video call ended, Eleanor turned to Devon. "Your office. Now." Then to me, "Quinn, please, wait here." As they left, Terry leaned over. "Well played," he murmured, "though extremely risky." I smiled slightly. The best moves always are. For 28 minutes, I sat alone in the conference room, watching the digital clock on the wall mark time with silent precision. I didn't check my phone. I didn't review notes. I simply waited, knowing that whatever happened next would determine the trajectory of my career. At exactly the 30-minute mark, the door opened. Eleanor entered alone, her expression unreadable. "Walk with me," she said. We moved silently through the corridor to her corner office. Unlike Devon's space, with its ostentatious displays, Eleanor's office was elegant and understated, achievement that didn't need to announce itself. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a chair as she closed the door. I complied, maintaining perfect posture despite the tension coiling inside me. "In 30 years of business," she began, "I've never encountered quite this situation." Her tone wasn't angry, merely analytical. "You've effectively created a scenario where our company's success is tied directly to you personally. The clients made their own decisions," I pointed out. A small smile touched her lips. "After you carefully laid the groundwork. Don't misunderstand. I'm not criticizing. I'm impressed. It was methodically executed. She leaned back in her chair. Devin is, naturally, calling for your immediate termination, which would trigger the contract clauses, I said. Precisely. He seems to believe the clients are bluffing. They're not. Eleanor nodded slowly. I don't believe they are either, which leaves us with limited options. She studied me. What do you actually want, Quinn? It was the question I'd been waiting for. Recognition for results, compensation commensurate with value created, and leadership that supports client-focused approaches rather than undermining them. Reasonable requests, she agreed, though implementing them creates certain complications. Such as Devin's position, I suggested. Such as Devin's position, she confirmed. He structured things to make himself seemingly indispensable. Seemingly being the operative word, I noted. Eleanor's eyes narrowed slightly. You've found a way around the supplier agreements. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. The territorial exclusivity is assigned to the senior sales director position, not to Devin personally. The contracts don't specify who holds that title. Understanding dawned in Eleanor's eyes. You're not just negotiating for better terms. You want his job. I want the authority to properly serve our clients and grow our business, I corrected. Whether that comes with his title or a new position is secondary. Eleanor stood and walked to the window, looking out over the city skyline. Devin has been with us for 12 years, and in that time, he's structured the company to serve his interests above everyone else's, including yours, I pointed out. She turned back to me. Tell me about Vince Reynolds. The question caught me off guard. How do you know that you've been meeting with him? That his consultancy has filed partnership papers with your name on them? She smiled thinly. I didn't become CEO by being unobservant, Quinn. I decided complete honesty was my only option. It's my contingency plan. If this conversation had gone differently, I would have resigned today and joined his firm. Several key clients would likely have followed within 30 days. And now? That depends on what happens next. Eleanor returned to her desk and pressed the intercom. Send them in. The door opened, and Terry entered, followed by Marissa and Paolo. Devin was notably absent. We've reached a decision, Eleanor announced. Effective immediately, we're creating a new position, Chief Client Officer, responsible for our key account strategies and implementation approaches. Quinn will assume this role, with commensurate compensation and equity participation. My pulse quickened, but I kept my expression neutral. And the reporting structure? You'll report directly to me, Eleanor said. Devin will remain as sales director, focusing on new business development, but all existing major accounts will fall under your purview. That arrangement won't work, I said quietly. Devin will undermine any parallel structure. Eleanor's expression hardened slightly. Devin has been given two options: accept the new structure or tender his resignation. He's currently considering his position. Before I could respond, a commotion erupted in the hallway. Devin's voice carried clearly through the door. This is ridiculous. You can't let her dictate terms. The door burst open, and Devin stood there, face flushed with anger, his gaze locked on me with pure hatred. You engineered this whole thing, he spat. Turned my clients against me. Manipulated contracts. This is corporate sabotage. Eleanor's voice cut through his tirade. Devin, your options have been clearly presented. What's your decision? He pointed an accusing finger at me. You'll regret this. All of you. Those clients are loyal to me, not her. The contracts suggest otherwise, Terry observed mildly. Devin turned to Eleanor. 12 years I've given this company. 12 years of record growth. And this is how you repay me? By handing everything to her? Not everything, Eleanor corrected. Just the responsibilities she's proven better equipped to handle. For a moment, I thought Devin might actually lunge across the room. Instead, he straightened his tie with shaking hands. Keep the job, he said coldly. I resign. Effective immediately. Eleanor nodded. Security will assist you in clearing out your office. As Devin turned to leave, I called after him. Devin. He paused but didn't turn around. Do you remember what you said to me last week? I asked. About not being worried about replacing me? His shoulders stiffened. It's interesting, I continued, how quickly things can change. Without another word, he walked out. The room was silent for a moment before Eleanor turned to me. Your first challenge as Chief Client Officer will be stabilizing those client relationships. They need reassurance that their concerns have been addressed. I'll call them immediately. I agreed. And Quinn? Eleanor added. I assume your discussions with Vince Reynolds are now concluded? I met her gaze evenly. They are good, because I expect absolute loyalty from my executive team. You'll have it, I promised, as long as it's reciprocal. She nodded, understanding the implicit boundary I'd drawn. The board meets on Thursday. I'll need you to present your client strategy moving forward. I'll be ready. As the others filed out, Terry lingered. That was either the bravest or most reckless career move I've ever witnessed, he said quietly. I'm still not sure which. I smiled. Sometimes you have to risk everything to gain anything worth having. 6 months later, I stood at the podium during our annual company meeting, presenting the quarterly results. Revenue had increased 42%. Client retention stood at 97%. Our stock had climbed 36%. In the front row sat Eleanor, nodding approvingly as I outlined our expanded client-centered approach. The team had doubled in size, with each account manager now trained in my methodology, understanding client challenges first, then developing customized solutions. After the presentation, Eleanor joined me at the refreshment table. The board is extremely pleased, she said, handing me a glass of champagne, particularly with how smoothly the transition went. Most of the clients didn't even notice, I replied. They just knew their needs were being met. And Devin? I smiled slightly. From what I hear, he's struggling to rebuild his network. Apparently, when you build relationships based solely on position rather than value, they don't transfer well. Eleanor studied me over her glass. You know, when you orchestrated that takeover, I wasn't entirely sure whether to be impressed or concerned. Having someone capable of such strategic thinking has proven valuable, but also somewhat unsettling. I prefer to think of it as alignment, I said, ensuring that everyone's interests, clients, company, and employees are properly balanced. Just make sure our interests remain aligned, she said with a meaningful look. As long as we continue valuing results over politics, we will be, I assured her. As Eleanor moved away to speak with board members, my phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from Laurel at Merston, confirming their contract renewal with a 30% increase in order volume. I smiled to myself, thinking of Devin's words that day in his office. I'm not worried about replacing you. He should have been. If this story resonated with you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about workplace justice. Have you ever been undervalued despite breaking records? Share your experience in the comments below. Remember, sometimes the most powerful response isn't immediate confrontation, it's strategic patience and perfect timing.